that which what's going on in Baton Rouge right now. And that I've just continually watched the video and the pictures coming out going, what the hell are they thinking?
They're racist. What do you mean, what are they thinking? They're racist out there.
That's not fair.
That's not fair. I'm not suggesting that the police shouldn't be out there because protests can go wrong. It doesn't take much for something to go south. However, their response, every officer is in battle armor, and I use those words deliberately, full armor, gas masks, and nobody interacting, simply to disperse the crowd as though the crowd does not have something meaningful to say.
Wait, hold on. Let me address that. I want to address that because one, I don't think that is a fair accusation. In talking to somebody who was in Louisiana, who's with the state of Louisiana public safety community, I will tell you that the difference that happened, like we saw what happened, the pictures that we saw in Atlanta, not quite what we saw in Dallas, but not quite to the level we've seen in Baton Rouge. In Baton Rouge, the problem has been, as was the case in Ferguson, a large amount of the community in Baton Rouge, those community leaders wanted a peaceful protest to happen. What happens is you get outsiders from the community who want to instigate the police, interact with the police, and that's the problem. That is the problem right now in Baton Rouge.
But part of the problem is
that's
that
absolutely
no.
One at a time.
Yeah, Denise first, then Dan.
I do a lot of work down in New Orleans and at Baton Rouge and other parts of Louisiana, and I'm constantly amazed by the racial tension down there. The in-your-face racist comments that I get when I fly down there. So you're not going to tell me that this is all outsiders coming in. No, this is some homegrown stuff, and this homegrown stuff is blowing up.
I'll tell you what, Denise. I tell you what, because here's the thing right now. When you look at New Orleans Police Department, okay, equal number African American white. You look at Baton Rouge, a little bit more white than black, but still a substantial number of black law enforcement officers on that force. What you can't tell me is that the department itself is inherently racist. That's part of the problem.
What I'm saying is the culture down there. So you can't just say people are coming from outside of Louisiana to come in. No, that's not what's happening. You have a problem
You're missing the point. The problem that's happened, it's the problem that happened in Ferguson. It's the problem. You look at the people in Ferguson who protested the shooting in that community. The community activists were the ones that are saying, look, let's be peaceful. It's when they started coming in from Chicago, St. Louis, and Detroit, who people purposely wanting to make an issue of this not peaceful. That tends to be the problem in the escalation in a lot of this, and that's the problem we're experiencing in Baton Rouge. Why didn't we see that in Dallas? Why didn't we see that in Atlanta even?
No, and so there are a bunch of things there. So for starters, we always have to be careful of the narrative, especially of those who are professionals in control of the narrative. Looking at the shooting of the gentleman in South Carolina who ran from the cop, was shot from behind. Huffington Post did a great piece because the video didn't come out for a couple of days. So the initial public reports, the police officer, there was a struggle for his taser. The narrative was absolutely seemed justified until the video came out. So while I'm absolutely sympathetic to what the Baton Rouge Police Department is saying, I'm not quite willing to say that is absolutely the correct statement. But beyond that, and we've been generally pretty good on this, while integrated police departments that actually reflect the diversity of the communities they are policing help, there is plenty of evidence to suggest this is not a black-white problem, and you correctly were using the phrase a black-blue problem, because once the uniform is on, something changes. And the Dallas Police Department and Chief Brown has talked about a great deal as far as what has been done to not only learning the verbal jiu-jitsu and how to de-escalate a situation, but also how to make sure that something doesn't evolve to discriminate between a person that is out to cause trouble and somebody who is peacefully protesting. I mean, there is the picture that has gone viral nationwide of a woman in a sundress simply who was there protesting,
right,
who was immediately surrounded. Now, she was peaceably arrested, but she was surrounded by 3 cops, arrested, and brought off. Now, the gentlemen, the police officers that arrested her, were in full combat gear. And to suggest that was necessary in that case, when the larger issue at play is not necessarily that incident, there is a visceral level of frustration within a community, and suggesting that is the only way of responding to it is simply not correct.
It's the only way
which is
of
why
responding
I look at Dallas as a much better way of responding.
Admiral Ken, and then I'll respond.
I think it's been this discussion, like the ones that I've listened to across the weekend from the shootings of last week. Everybody has got an air of truth and hyperbole going on at the same time. So the fact of the matter is that the cops down in Baton Rouge are wearing riot gear because people are throwing rocks and stones.
Right.
That's it. I mean, call them outside agitators, call them people, locals or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, those guys are wearing that gear to protect themselves, and having them be able to magically take that stuff off, to engage one of the civilian populace, I think it's not a rational expectation. Two, even the Dallas cops, will tell you that they're living in two different worlds. When they're wearing that uniform, they're protecting and serving, and in most cases, they are treated with regard by everybody and by nearly most people that they come in contact with, black, white, brown, whatever, in the Dallas population. They will tell you a different story when they're not wearing that uniform, when they're in civilian clothes. They will tell you a different story. They are basically making sure that they've got the shield at the ready in case something starts going down. So Denise is partially right. There is still, in some communities, and I don't care to label them black or white, I'll just call them, in some American communities, where there is still a very clear dividing line between those people who are black and those people who are white or brown or whatever. There's still that line there. And that animosity, I think the animosity that is there is being hyped up by the media. Mika Brzezinski referred to the situation in the U.S. 2 days ago as a kettle pot about to boil over. I'm sorry, I don't think so. I don't see that, and I don't believe that. And I made the point to just the other day on Sunday. I'm walking down the street with my daughter in Georgetown, and I asked her, "Did anybody look at you cross-eyed today?" She goes, "No, everybody was pretty nice and friendly." Right. That's an environment where the situation's not getting ready.
But I look at Alan Moore. I look at a place like Atlanta, African American police chief, actively community policing. Still, however, a lot of tension in the black community. I look at Dallas. Even David Brown will admit that although community policing, Dallas has largely become a model of large urban community policing, there's still tension between law enforcement and the community in certain areas of Dallas. Is there an inherent almost responsibility or an inherent pressure on urban chiefs of police like David Brown in Dallas to enhance, increase, and get the message out about the success of community policing?
Well, of course there is, and it happens all over in cities all over the country. But they're constrained by resources. The Dallas police force has huge turnover. They're notoriously poor paying compared to some of the surrounding suburbs. They're having it's kind of easy for him to say, you want to be part of the solution? Come on down, apply for a job. We got openings because we got people. We just can't get people who are qualified. It's fine to say, come on down, sign up, but if the people who are most angry, most frustrated can't qualify, and many of them would not be able to qualify, that it sounds good, it's heartfelt. I have no quarrel with him saying it, but it's not like that's the answer. It's sort of throwing the challenge out, but to a lot of them, the people who are angriest, most prone to violence, if they're locals, probably couldn't get hired anyway. But community police, they're experiments. There are laboratories, if you will. They're not experiments. They're laboratories in every city and community and sheriff's department around the country. They're all I mean, most of them are operating in good faith. I'm sure there are some that are filled with a strain of ugliness. And even if it's a part of the country where there's still an enormous amount of racial animosity, but you have to keep working at it. If we drop our guard and say, well, we're trying, maybe this will blow over, let's go back to the status quo ante, that doesn't get at the underlying racism that we live with, the underlying double standard, the underlying complete fundamental unfairness that does have a racial identity attached to it.
Denise Crap.
I've done a lot of work with the police over the past 2 years. And here in D.C., we're a little different. We have Kathy Lanier, who has been phenomenal. And then we have Commander Conti, who's 1D for us. The things that are working for Capitol Hill and that are working for our part of the city are a couple of things. First, we're demanding monthly meetings with the police. If you get a chance, folks, do that. It's a couple hours out of your evening, once a month, but you get a chance to meet them. The second one that's happening here is that they're doing a drive, that you can drive with your local police officer. And
Ride-alongs.
It's a ride-along. That has been very, very helpful to do that. The third one, and it's not the police, but it is citywide. It's called a truck touch. And what they once a year at RFK Stadium, they bring all of the cars. So you've got the police, you've got the firefighters, you've got the helos, you've got everything. And the reason they do that is so that people can go up and see a police officer, a firefighter, or somebody in the law enforcement community next to the vehicles that you're going to see on a day-to-day basis. It familiarizes people in a very soft way. Highly encourage that. You'll spend 3 hours, especially if you have little boys. They love those, but again, it's a soft way to meet the police officers. The last way to do that is that the police here in D.C. have started doing daily updates on crime. And if you don't get that already from your own police forces, ask them to do that, because then you too can start tracking what's going on a day-by-day basis. And it helps you get a better understanding of A, the crime that's occurring in your neighborhood, and B, who's committing this crime.
Right.
So
But
again, it's just transparency.
I think one of the things is, community policing is expensive. Nobody knows that. They don't talk about that. It's hard to fund. What nobody understands is that this is a training problem. Is there a cultural problem? Yeah, there's probably a cultural problem. I go back to my days down in Georgia. I go back, to my days down in Florida. As a law enforcement officer who served for 12 years in some law enforcement capacity, I can tell you I was fortunate enough. I only drew my weapon twice in those entire 12 years. I pulled over black people, white people, Hispanic people all the time. It was a vehicle stop. This, to me, is more of a training issue, a de-escalation issue. Cops aren't trained enough to de-escalate. I think that's part of the problem. But what we've got is, we look at Dallas, for example. Dallas into itself is inherently, as Alan pointed out, one of the most low-paying urban police departments in the region compared to Fort Worth, Arlington,
Plano.
Frisco. You look at just look down I-45 in Houston. Houston PD, not paid well. The surrounding areas, Galveston County, for example. You look around up in the Woodlands. Those police departments pay a lot more and a lot better. It's a funding issue. There's got to be funds to pay for law enforcement. But the bottom line here is, this is not a situation that's going away. This is not a situation that's going to resolve itself in the next 30 days, 60, 90 days. This is going to be a long-term discussion. However, we have to admit, though, there's a lot of people that are doing a lot of protesting about stuff that they could actually be part of the solution instead of the constant protesting doesn't work. Be part of the solution. Be part of the dialogue. Be part of the dialogue. Why are you giving me a weird face?
No, because protest is part of the dialogue.